Hey everyone, this is Samir Kumar Saha in our first ever LinkedIn Live, the Experience Business podcast. So this is my first podcast, which is going live from uh, from LinkedIn and from the YouTube. And I have with me the Jeff Perkins. But Jeff, welcome you.
Thanks, Samir. It's great to be with you.
I know I'm just finding it really. I'm really excited, right? Because finding your time for my podcast and excited to have a meaningful conversation over here.
Yeah. Me too. Me too.
I was actually, just before this episode, right? I was just going to your Twitter profile and I saw your pinned tweet, right, where you were actually showing a video of your two kids, two daughters, right? And they are talking about, you always talk about marketing and you always chat about marketing and you say that, what they should do, what they think actually, the marketing could be helped, could be improved. That was uh, that was so close to me because even my kid actually keeps complaining about, I do talk about marketing and other stuff, right? This is so boring.
Yeah, my kids they keep me honest for sure. And my favorite line in that is when my daughter goes, all you said, Dad, was marketing is blah blah blah, and that was a pretty accurate statement by her. So yeah. I always I think it's fun to kind of try to teach my kids what I do for a living, but I always realize that for the most part they're going to think it's incredibly boring.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they listen to it, right, all the time, and that's the thing. And since the time we have started actually working from home, right, at least the kids
Right.
also get to know that what we actually do.
Right.
So I just want to welcome those who have joined our session. And guys, this is our first ever the Experience Business Podcast live, and I would like to welcome you. Since I am from India, right, it is exactly 7:45, and the people who are joining from US, it's around 9:45. So those who are joining from the US, my good morning to everyone, and those who are joining from India, good evening, everybody. And for the today's session, right, we have Jeff here who will be talking about how to develop a winning product experience. And Jeff, in all sense, right, I believe that he has actually achieved so far for his own company, uh, Park Mobile.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. Thank you.
So the for the people, right, those who do not know actually Jeff, right, Jeff is currently a CMO and head of product at Park Mobile, and he is actually a marketing geek, I would say. And for the most important part, right, he has uh, been a kind of able to achieve the growth of the Park Mobile in the last 2 years, right? In the past 2 years, he has grown along with his team the user base from the 8 million to 20 plus million dollar 20 plus million users, and they are now actually adding the 1 million new users every 70 days. I hope I'm right, Jeff.
Yeah, it's actually sometimes closer to 60 days, but between 60
Uh-huh.
and 70 days, we add a million users, which is amazing when you think about the company when it was started in 2008. It took us about 5 years to get the first million,
Uh-huh.
and now we're adding a million every 60 to 70 days, which is pretty astounding growth if you think about it.
Okay, okay. But then, how do you find? Because if you ask me personally, right, the reason why I have chosen this topic, product experience, because I believe uh, that today, right, the customer experience is something only that every marketers are focusing on, because there's so many products, so many services, they're all looking equal, right? And there's only one way to stand out is to focus on customer experience, and we cannot ignore which is the one of the product, which is the one of the element of the customer experience, right? So uh, the reason why I had chosen this topic, because I believe that the product experience can make or break the customer journey, and play a pivotal role in customer retention.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Well, in a traditional company, oftentimes everything is very siloed. Marketing does marketing, product does product, sales
Mm-hmm.
does sales. But I think what you have to realize, especially when you're in an executive role in a company, is that those silos really don't matter that
Mm-hmm.
much,
Yeah.
because it's all about, in our case, the user and the user experience with every single touch point with ParkMobile, the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And ParkMobile, the brand, spans from, when you are first learning about the brand, maybe you see a sign or you see an advertisement, to when you're actually using the product, to when you are maybe interacting with our customer service team, or when you're reviewing us on the App Store. That is all part of the user experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is not to just have different experiences at every place. The goal is to have one unified experience for the end user, so they know at every single touch point they have with the ParkMobile brand, there's a certain amount of consistency, and they know it's going to be a good, high quality experience wherever they're interacting with us.
Agree. So how do you basically in the ParkMobile, right? How the product experience is really helping you drive the CX?
Right. So what we spend a lot of time doing, and I personally spend a lot of time doing, is really trying to dig deep to understand our users. And we do this in a variety of ways. We look at a lot of the data and analytics that we have on user behavior. We
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of market research with our user base to really understand what they're doing, what they think about the app, what they think about the category that we compete in. We spend a lot of time, actually, I personally spend a lot of time talking to our customer service team.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's highly valuable, because they're on the front line of dealing with all the issues with that our users are encountering, and they help us in immense ways, being able to kind of look at things where we have a lot of calls coming in or a lot of chats coming in, and they're all very consistent, and they're the similar themes. So that means we have to try to attack some of those issues that are coming into our customer service team, so those issues stop coming in, and that team doesn't have to spend so much time on the same issues over and over again. I also read a lot of the online reviews in the app stores. I spend a lot of time on our social media channels listening. And if you do that and you really commit to understanding the user,
Mm-hmm.
you will come up with all kinds of ways that you can make that experience a lot better, right? And
Agree.
so that's, I think, the biggest thing is really committing to a deep understanding of what's going on with the user, what the core issues are, and then putting plans in place to really attack those issues that you have with your application. And that's a lot of what I focus on as a product and marketing leader, is how do we fix the stuff that we know isn't broken, that our users are telling us isn't working for them, and how do we make those things better? So we're taking the burden off of our organization. We're creating a better customer experience
Mm-hmm.
overall, and we're just we're creating a better app for our users.
So, I mean, when you joined ParkMobile, right? What was the status that time, and what is that you see now? The reason behind such a growth in such a small amount of time. I mean, like achieving this million number of users, right? 8 million plus to 20 millions now in 2 years, right? Is not a easy job. So, what do you think has changed in last 2 years?
Right. Well, I think there's been a few dynamics going on. One is a broad industry dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
where you have a lot of cities that used to just offer one way to pay for parking, where you had to pay at a meter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was how you paid for parking. You went to the meter, you put in coins or a credit card, and that's not a great experience for the user, because for a couple of reasons. One, users generally don't like to go up to these foreign pieces of equipment and just put their information in. So that's one part that just wasn't pleasant. But if you were, say, you pay at the meter, you go shopping, you go to dinner, you go do whatever you're going to do, and then you realize your time is expiring on the meter, you have
Yeah.
to run all the way back to the meter to put more money in. And that's really annoying, right? Because if you're out and about, the last thing you want to do is go back to your car to just put money in so then you could go back to doing what you were doing. So the app became a really nice way to pay for parking without having to touch the physical hardware, and to be able to then extend the time while you're out and about so you don't have to run back and feed the meter. So it's a modern solution. It's a solution that really a lot of people, once they started using, they didn't go back to paying the old way at the meter. And so we had a lot of momentum happening just from people wanting to pay for parking on a mobile app. So that was kind of one, the right solution at the right time for the user. The second thing that really led to our growth is once we established ourselves in a city, we started then going to the nearby cities. So Washington, D.C. is a perfect example. We rolled out in Washington, D.C. around 2010. And if you go to that area today, you'll not only find us in Washington, D.C., but you'll find us in almost every city surrounding Washington, D.C. The whole metro area also uses ParkMobile. And so what happened was this land and expand dynamic, where as we got a foothold in one city, all the other cities around wanted to also have an app. And then what you found is as all these cities in an area had the app, then you had maybe the college and the universities in the area said, well, maybe we'll accept the app on campus. Then you had the sports and stadium venues in the area saying, hey, we should accept ParkMobile at our venue and let people reserve parking there. So what this really did is it created kind of this flywheel effect for us, where the more cities we opened in, the more demand there was for our services. And that's really, I think, what propelled a lot of our growth over the last several years, is just this high demand in, cities across the country to go from the legacy physical parking hardware to a mobile contactless solution. And we've really been the leader in the United States of providing that to cities really across the country. We're in 450 cities now, and we're adding new cities on a weekly basis to our network.
Wow, that's amazing. But then how the things have changed, because the parking is something, right, was really great, right, when there was no COVID. I mean, in this in current situation, what's the status now?
So COVID's had some.
I'm so sorry. Now, how the things have been basically pivotal in. I would rephrase my question, right? How basically things have changed in this COVID-19 for the ParkMobile?
Yeah, so COVID has really created some challenging dynamics for our business. Obviously, if people aren't going to work, if people are sheltering in place, obviously they're not driving and they're not parking. And so, when really the core shutdown started to happen in the United States, in that kind of March, April timing, we saw our parking transaction volume really fall off a cliff during that time. We were down about 95% versus where we were in January, February. So it was a really challenging time for the business. Now, as cities and states have started to reopen, we've seen that volume start to come back. Now, we're not where we were before COVID. Our volumes are still lower, probably about 60% of what we were doing before COVID. But on the other side, on a positive note, what COVID has done is it's accelerated a lot of the moves in cities from physical parking equipment to contactless options like the app. And what we've seen in the last year is that we have done more deals with cities, rolled out more new cities and locations than we had in the previous 3 years. It's been a huge year for our business overall, where we've just had this influx of demand because people who are running parking in cities are realizing, hey, we don't want people touching the physical parking equipment. We don't want people touching the meter. That could spread the virus. We much rather have people pay on their mobile device, and we need to have an option for that for our residents and visitors. And so you've seen cities across the country really come into ParkMobile, and we've been able to get them up and running on the app very quickly. So that's been, a more positive dynamic. So as the vaccine starts to get rolled out across the country in the coming months, people feel more comfortable going out. You're going to see our business really, really start to spike and go back probably well beyond what we were doing in pre-COVID levels, because we've opened so many more locations overall. So that's really, I think, the exciting thing for our business when we look out in the next 12 months. All the work we've done during this time of COVID is really going to pay off down the road.
Cool. So I mean, I think the businesses across the world, I would say that the things have changed a lot, and from the experience point of view, in fact, not just the experience point of view. In fact, the companies are rethinking even the business model, the way they were doing the business earlier.
Yeah, well, I mean, our core business model hasn't necessarily changed as a result of COVID. We're still doing the same things. We have found some creative ways, though, to evolve our business so we can we can basically keep the app top of mind. One of the issues that we saw, especially during the early days of COVID, is people were just they were on social media posting, well, I guess I'm not going to need ParkMobile anymore because I'm not driving anywhere, so I'm going to delete the app. And we saw a lot of people doing that. Our usage of the app dropped off dramatically. So as a team, we said, all right, how can we keep the app top of mind so people don't delete it? And just so we're staying relevant at a time when people aren't necessarily parking. And so we turn the app into a fundraising tool. One thing we do very well at ParkMobile is process parking payments. We process 100 million parking payments every year. And so we know payments. We know how to process credit card transactions at scale. So what we did is we said, all right, instead of paying for parking, why don't we use the app to make charitable donations? So during COVID, especially the beginning of COVID, we were promoting, we were doing fundraising for a lot of local charities across the country. We ended up raising over $36,000 for charities that are really helping people that were affected by COVID. So that's just an example of how sometimes you have to pivot. We tried to use the app for a different purpose at that point.
Agreed.
And that really kind of kept us relevant and also created a lot of goodwill with our base of users because they were seeing us use kind of the marketing power and the audience built into the app to do something very good for people who were going through a very rough time. And so that's one example of how we had to pivot during COVID. Another thing that we focused on is, we are a transaction-based business, right? So we get paid when people use the app. We introduced not that long ago a subscription program as well. We call it ParkMobile Pro. It's 99 cents a month. And so people are able to get enhanced features with ParkMobile Pro. They get some discounts with ParkMobile Pro, and then we have benefits like discounts on rental cars. We have roadside assistance that's built in. So a lot of nice features to the ParkMobile Pro premium subscription. What we found during COVID is that we were able to generate a lot of revenue that was recurring during that time. So that revenue really stuck, and it wasn't dependent on whether or not people were using the app, and it was consistent revenue coming in. So sometimes when you face challenges, you have to look at your revenue model overall and say, hey, maybe we need to pivot from a transaction model to a subscription model to make sure we have reoccurring revenue coming into the business. Wow.
So that's interesting. So coming back to another product experience, right? One is a ParkMobile, and it is, I think, the story that you're telling is really something to definitely learn from. What, according to you, you think that the other brands which you see it as an idol, right, who are offering the good product experience, and why you believe that they are good according to you?
Well, I think a good product experience starts with understanding your users, understanding the role that your product plays in that user's life, right? And so with ParkMobile, the interesting thing about our business is that we're not the kind of app that you're spending a lot of time in usually. People aren't sitting around their house on the weekend, just scrolling through ParkMobile parking locations. It's just not a way people are using the app. We see the app really as a utility, right? So it's a product that people use when they need it, and they don't use it when they don't need it. And so that's a really important thing to think about. So if you're a utility app, the critical thing is that you're not being too intrusive with your users. You have to work really well when they need it, but you don't want to get in their way when they don't need it. And so we're always very careful with our product that we're not being too intrusive with our users. So we're not sending them too many emails or too many in-app messages. We're not trying to be something that we're not, right? We're not Facebook or Twitter. We're not an app you're going to invest hours sitting there. The most important thing for us is that people use the app, know how to use it, aren't confused by the interface. And so when we look at product design for the app, our goal might be different than, say, someone from Facebook that's trying to keep people engaged in the app for a very long time. Our goal is actually the opposite, which is get people into the app and out of the app immediately. And that's why we do things like have a very, very short registration process. Try to make it as simple as possible. We really only need to get a couple pieces of information from you. We need an email, a password, credit card, and a vehicle that you want to park. And that's it. And we try to get you through that flow very quickly so you can then get to the parking session. And then once it's set up, it's just really 3 taps to start a parking session. So I find the best apps, the best products out there generally have a good understanding of who their audience is, the role that the product plays in that audience's life. Are you a high engagement app or are you a utility app? And then if you are a utility app, trying to reduce as much friction in the process as possible. So the companies that do a great job of this, think about Uber. They have a great product experience, very seamless, very frictionless, gets you in and out of the app very quickly, but helps you along the way. So it's those kind of products that I think really win in the end. The products that don't win, I find, are the ones where it's popping up a lot of advertising that annoys you, trying to engage you when you don't want to be engaged. So those are the ones that really are probably the less popular apps. But we feel like our user experience overall is very good. We're always working to make it better. That's part of the process that we go through. Is we're always looking at what are the points where conversions are maybe breaking or not working as well, and then you go in and you try to optimize the user experience to fix that.
Okay, many times we see that many companies actually directly jump into the experience or other sort of activities, right? And but that's many times is also not a problem, because for some companies, right, it might be also the case of defining the product in a right way, whether they have actually really understood the problem, or whether it is really actually the first or a very important pain point for the customer. So what do you think that the company should consider during the product definition process?
I think the big things that companies really need to consider when they're defining the product, coming up with the requirements for the product. Again, all going back to what problem are you trying to solve for the user, right? So in our case, it's a very simple problem. Pay at the meter versus pay on the app. Okay, we want to make it as easy as possible to pay on the app. How do we go about doing that? So it's studying every part of the process for a person as they're looking to do whatever activity they're trying to do, and figure out how your product can make it better. And you could do this in a variety of ways, I think. And I always go back to doing the work up front of research. And there's a lot of ways to gather research. And I'll tell you a lot of things that we do. It's really talking to your users, or if you don't have users, just doing some surveys to figure out what parts of a given process are broken. What are the pain points? I mean, the best products out there always kind of solve some kind of pain point, right? If you think about, taxi cabs, for example, were a pain. You could call a taxi cab, you didn't know if they were going to ever come. So introducing Uber, ordering delivery from 20 different restaurants was always a challenge. So then you have products like Postmates that came in that solved that problem. So I think the big thing is always figuring out what problem you're solving. What are all the kind of components of that problem for the consumer? And then how can your product in an easy, frictionless way really helps overcome that pain point for the consumer? I mean, those are all the things that go into it. And then the second part of it is, okay, all the problems the consumer has.
Yeah.
But then how do you focus them down to the big ones? And I think that's a big part of it, right? ParkMobile as a company, we have lots of people with lots of opinions on what the product should be, what features should be in the product. And a lot of those opinions are great. And we deal with a lot of our clients as well, our city clients, who all have different things they want out of the product. But really the job of a product leader is to focus on the most important things and to get everything else out of the way, right? Mm-hmm. So all of the cool features that you could put into an app really don't matter if the core functionality isn't great. And so, an example with ParkMobile is that we had a feature. So when you parked your car, you could then social share where you were parking. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it seemed like a good feature, but nobody used it. Nobody used it because people don't really want everyone knowing where they park their car, honestly. And so we realized, well, maybe that feature doesn't need to be in the app. So we removed it from the app. So it's not always what you put in the app, it's what you take out of the app, because anything that is a distraction from the core functionality that's getting people through a parking transaction oftentimes is probably you may not need. It's just something that is trendy that you think you need in the app, but really nobody's going to use.
But then how do you basically prioritize? Because yes, as a product company, right, you keep getting the feature requests, right? And even I have seen this is the problem, basically the widespread, right? The companies tend to keep on developing so many features so that, they become very thin across many verticals, right? And they are not good in all of them. How do you basically prioritize that which features should be developed? Or which are those features, right, which is very, very important to be developed and worth your consideration?
Right. Well, at the end of the day, it comes down to revenue. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of opportunities in front of us. We have a lot of feature requests that come in from our clients, but everything goes through a process at ParkMobile. We actually have a weekly, what we call a deal review board. Uh-huh. And that's where people in the company can come in and present, hey, this client wants this feature. Here's a new technology partner we want to do an integration with. So every week we're reviewing new opportunities, and we put them through a very strict process where we don't put anything on the roadmap unless there's wide agreement to it, and if we can see a clear path to revenue. Because there are plenty of ideas that come in that are good ideas, mm-hmm. and that would probably make the app better in some way, and that may make its way onto the roadmap at some point. But if you're not delivering more revenue for the business, it's, at least in our company, it's going to be very hard to get on the roadmap because we're a smaller business. We're very lean, and so we focus our engineering dollars almost 100% on opportunities that are going to deliver more revenue for the business. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really important thing to think about. And so when you're evaluating new opportunities coming in, you always have to ask yourself, is that going to deliver revenue? And if it's not, you have to say, well, should that be on the roadmap at all? And maybe it should be. Maybe it should be on the roadmap because honestly, not everything on the roadmap is going to deliver revenue.
Agree.
There's a lot of things on the roadmap that we do because they're table stakes. They're things that you just have to do. They have to be in the app. But I would say the lion's share of things that are on our roadmap, and especially the ones that are the highest priority projects, are the ones where we know they are going to deliver revenue back to the business. And it's super simple, right? Is this a good idea? It might be a good idea, but is there a revenue component to it for our business? Because we're not a nonprofit. We're in the business to make money, to grow the company, and if we're putting a lot of stuff into the product that's not going to do that, as cool as it could be, and as many awards as we might win for having this really innovative feature, it's not going to help us get where we want to be as a business. So that's really, I think, the most important thing. And the way I try to look at product and marketing is through the lens, not as someone who's a practitioner of those functions, but more as a business owner. And I think a useful exercise is always to say, well, if this was my business that I was funding out of my own pocket, would I spend money on this product or this feature or that feature? And when you look at things through that lens, it really forces you to come back to what's the impact going to be on the business if we do this. And if there's not going to be a significant impact from a revenue perspective, you may say, well, all right, we're going to pass on that, or we're going to put it in a parking lot, and maybe we'll take it on later if there's time.
So how do you basically communicate this? Because one side is request coming in, and then how do you basically communicate it so that it does not hurt basically your current customer sentiment?
Yeah, it's always a delicate. It's always delicate to, if a customer really wants a feature, and we don't want to do that feature, we just have to be pretty honest with the customer and say, hey, this is not something that is important to our business. One of the challenges we have is that many times clients want features for their specific city, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that we always have to focus on, okay, one, is that a good idea? Is that feature a good idea? And then if we think it's a good idea, then the second question is, okay, does this scale to our other clients? And understanding if a idea scales is critical, because the last thing we want to do is be developing a lot of one-off point solutions for our thousands of clients across the country, because it's impossible to manage. We have a philosophy. We want to build it once, build it right, and build it to scale. Those three things, right? And so anything that doesn't do that, we have to say no to. But we're always nice about it, and we want our clients to really be great partners. But sometimes there are certain requests that just might not align with our core philosophy on how we build product. And there have been times, honestly, where clients have come to us and they've said, hey, we will pay you for this feature, right? Our clients actually don't pay us. We make revenue through transaction fees. So basically the end user essentially pays to use ParkMobile. So clients don't have to actually pay us to use our service. But we've had clients that come to us and said, Jeff, we want you to build this feature. We're willing to pay for you to build this feature. And we've had to say no to some of those requests because the feature didn't scale. And we are not a one-off dev shop. There's plenty of shops they can go to hire, and they could pay to build a solution. We build a product that scales, and that's really important if you want to have a large business, that you do things that aren't all custom solutions. You have to do things that are going to work for a much broader base of users.
So now the next question I have is maybe a pretty direct question, right? I don't know how much comfortable you would be, but my question is regarding your failures. What has been your single biggest mistake? As a leader, right? Since you joined, you had a pretty long career in marketing a product together, and I really want to know, what has been your single biggest mistake? Of course, we all make mistakes, but as a leader, right, and a marketer and a product. Working in a product, single biggest mistake you made as a leader while defining a product, and so far what has been your learning, if you want to share with others?
Yeah, I think I would say, and it goes back to my initial point on doing the research first. Any mistake I've made as a leader has always come back to not spending enough time on the upfront part of a project, defining the user, really understanding what the issues are, and then building a solution that addresses those issues, and also, making sure those issues are broad enough that that it's a viable business. I think those are some of the things. I've always looked at being an executive as a company. I mean, your biggest challenge is not really choosing what to do; it's choosing what not to do. Oftentimes, and having the discipline to focus on a few key things. And fortunately, at ParkMobile, I think we've been extraordinarily focused on our business, because there's plenty of things that we could be doing that we're not doing, but we've been really focused on building a product that serves the parking community, that scales really well, and we haven't got distracted with a lot of other things. I worked at a company several years back, though, called PGI, and PGI, some of the mistakes I made there, everything had to do with focus. So PGI was a company that had that sold audio and web conferencing products, and we actually had two web conferencing products, not one, but two web conferencing products we were selling. So what happened was all of our resources were split between working on these two separate products, and then we introduced a calendaring product that was called Agenda, and so we were then taking our limited resources that were working on two web conferencing products. Then we added a calendaring product to us. And so we just didn't have the resources to build all of these different products. And so what happened to PGI? We got our clock cleaned by Zoom, which focused on web conferencing and video conferencing alone. We got beat by Calendly, which only focused on calendaring software. So as a company, if you are trying to build all these different solutions, you are going to get creamed by the companies that are doing the best in breed solutions, that are going up against you. Because, if you're not focused and you're not really understanding, what you're going after, and you're just kind of spreading your resources across lots of different products, trying to find, that needle in a haystack that's going to grow your business, generally you're not going to be very successful. So I always think the companies that are the most successful are the ones that are the most focused on delivering the best experience in one core area. And then maybe once they nail that area, then you can expand out into other things.
Agree. I mean, that's wonderful. Scott is asking a question, and Scott, I think, we will not answer this question now, because Scott, I think when we started the session, right, Jeff has already answered this, that how did actually ParkMobile has become so dominant. And it's what Jeff has mentioned, right? They have been right from the beginning focused around the customers and have been pivoting their model. Right from the beginning, their focus has been around the product experience, serving the customers, and also prioritizing, what is most important for their business.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing to that, though. And it goes back to our last question. We've also been very focused, and I think some of our competitors have been potentially less focused than we have, and they've been going into different kinds of businesses. Whereas we've been very focused on the parking app and getting widespread adoption of the parking app. And we've been very smart on the way we've spent our money. So we've been financially very conservative in some ways. So, that's really helped us, especially during COVID, really weather the storm of the last 12 months, because we've been financially so conservative with our spend. We didn't plow tons of money into marketing because we didn't really have to. So one, being focused, being responsible financially, that's really helped us. And probably the last thing I'd say is, this flywheel effect of the more cities we're in, the more users we get, and then the more cities want to work with us. So we've been fortunate to just land some very big cities. We were also one of the first in the market, and first mover advantage also helps. But that's really how we've become very dominant. Is just we've been doing this for a long time. We are number one for awareness when it comes to parking apps, and cities that are looking to put a parking app in. The big thing they want to get high adoption of the app. Otherwise, why waste your time? And we have higher adoption than really, I would say, any other app on the market.
Hello. I'm so sorry, because I lost you. So my next question is actually, which is the topic of the session, is what is your step-by-step strategy to develop the full product experience?
Well, I would say, and you could kind of, if you look behind me, you kind of see some of my how I define the product experience here with all my Post-it notes. But I would say the best way to define the product experience is to dissect it. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by dissecting it is start with the very beginning, before somebody uses the ParkMobile app, right? So you go back to the very beginning before they ever use the app. Think about how they learn about the app, what their first time experience is, how they sign up for the app, what the experience is after they sign up for the app, what kind of emails or communication do they get, what happens when they call into the customer service team, what happens if they use the app once and never use it again, what happens if they're a power user of the app and they're using it 10 plus times a month. And so you really dissect the user experience for different personas. And so what that exercise does is it helps you kind of identify all the key touch points with the user to make sure, because when I think of product experience, that's very defined to like when they're actually using the app. I think more broadly about the holistic user experience as they're engaging with our brand, and making sure every single one of those touch points is accounted for, and you have a very thoughtful way you're communicating in all of those touch points. One thing that we spend a lot of time on, and I personally spend a lot of time on, is on customer service, right? So what are our customer service reps saying when people call in? When there's an angry tweet, how do we answer? And I actually, fun fact, I actually answer a lot of our social media complaints myself. So if you've complained on social media, you may have had a response directly from the CMO, head of product for the company. But that just helps us understand what's going wrong, where there are issues that need to be addressed. And I'll give you a couple examples where that attention to detail and that dissection really, really helps you. I was talking to one of our customer service reps, and they were telling me they were getting a consistent flow of calls coming in about complaints related to expired credit cards in the app. And because when you're going to park and you have the app set up, the last thing you want is to have to update your credit card on file. And it was just causing a lot of issues with our customer service team. So we basically started an aggressive campaign looking at when credit cards are expiring in the app and messaging to those people to make sure they were updating their credit card before they were ready to go make a parking transaction. And the impact of doing that was substantial. And our customer service team actually has told us we get almost none of those calls anymore. And that's great, because the fewer calls they get about that issue, the more time they could spend dealing with more important issues related to the app. So again, figuring out what are those areas where you're creating friction for the user, you're creating pain points for the user, and then as a product, prioritizing those and then going after them, coming up with solutions to fix them.
I have a question from the name is not coming in Restream, but I know the person, so I'm highlighting this question. 2 minutes. And that's a question from the branding perspective. And he has another question which is more interesting. But both the questions I would love you to answer. From the branding perspective, what was your content and partnership approach to get into so many cities so fast? And this is the question from Gianni. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Gianni Quintana.
Yeah. So one of the smartest things we've done from a branding perspective is that we create these signs that we put up in all of our cities, and we put them on the meters, we put them on signs above the meters, and they are bright green and they're highly visible. And so whenever people are in a city, they see these bright green ParkMobile signs wherever they go. And it's almost like having a million billboards all over the country. It's our best marketing tactic overall. But it's that bright green that people always associate. So when they see the bright green, they think ParkMobile. And that has been a really high impact way that we've been able to get our brand out there. The way that we have been able to really build awareness in a lot of our markets. When we ask people and we say, hey, how did you first learn about ParkMobile? Mm-hmm. The number one way they learned about ParkMobile was signs at the meters. So, there's all these great ways you can advertise your brand, right? But at the end of the day, for us, it's all about maximizing the impact at the point of purchase, essentially, mm-hmm. with really high impact signage for the ParkMobile brand right there. And that has been really more than anything else, the thing that has really helped us get a lot of users, just that really high impact signage. And we look at some of our competitors' signs in different markets, and it's a little more subtle. It's not as colorful. It kind of gets lost a bit in the parking meter sometimes. So we think that really high impact signage is just critical to getting high adoption. And then the other thing we do now, especially now that we have such a big user base, mm-hmm. is that whenever we go into a new city, we communicate to everybody who lives in the adjacent cities. And so if we go, we've just rolled out in York, Pennsylvania. We just rolled out in Hohokus, New Jersey. And in those cities, we have so many users in the immediate area that we are able to really drive a lot of awareness very easily. And the last thing we do is using technology like geotargeting. So as you are going from city to city, or maybe, if you're on a plane and you're flying from New York to Los Angeles, when you arrive in Los Angeles, we'll geofence parts of the city to let you know that, hey, ParkMobile is available in this city and you can use it here. Great way to drive adoption of the app and usage as people are going to different parts of the city. And the great thing is that it's the same app that you use in New York or LA or Philadelphia or Washington, D.C. You can really use it anywhere you go.
So that's a beautiful example, because when you say this, right, you are absolutely basically trying to tie your offline and online experience together using technology.
Yeah, exactly. That's everything we try to do, is making sure that we don't think of it even in offline and online. We think of it, this is the ParkMobile experience, right?
Yeah,
it's one cohesive experience, whether you are in the app, whether you are on our website, whether you're at the parking meter. We want you to have a very consistent user experience.
I have another question from the same person, and this is very good, that how do the reverse engineering of customer experience or user experience for those buyer personas? Which department do you have feedback loops during this process to make sure the app delivers on those touch points? What's your time frame?
Yeah, so when we think about our personas, we define kind of 4 key personas for ParkMobile, and we call the personas Risky Randy. Risky Randy is the guy who just drives into town. He doesn't know where he's going to park, but he knows he's going to find a parking spot somewhere, and he's going to use ParkMobile to pay for parking. We have Savvy Sam. Savvy Sam is the one who wants to kind of figure out where the best place to park is before he actually goes, and he's very savvy in his approach to finding that location. We have Novice Nancy. Novice Nancy is the one who is She's the one. She never. She doesn't go into the city a lot. She doesn't pay a lot for parking, so she doesn't know as much about, do I use the app and do I use the meter? And then we have Planning Paula, and Planning Paula is the one. She won't leave her house without knowing exactly where she's going to park and having a reservation in that parking garage, right? So 4 key personas there. And so what we try to do with our product strategy is make sure that we have solutions that work for every single persona, right? And so for novice Nancy, for example, we have a lightweight web-based option for her to use the app, or she could use the ParkMobile to pay in a solution like Google Pay.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't actually have to download the full experience ParkMobile app. There's easy ways for her to use ParkMobile without having to download this big app and set up an account. So that's for novice Nancy. For Planning Paula, we have a reservations feature, so you could book a prepay for a parking reservation in garages, before you actually leave the house. For Savvy Sam, we have what we call the parking availability feature that shows you on a map view where the available parking spots in your area, so you can avoid the streets with no parking and only go to the streets that have open parking. And then Risky Randy really just wants fast and easy way to pay for parking, and we have that as well. So you could see that's how we kind of define our key personas, and they're very broad, and I realize that, but so 4 key personas, and then we look at all of our product features that we're coming out with through the lens of which persona is this for, and is this what they need? Mm-hmm. And then after those features are in the market, we do a lot of research to understand, are people aware of these features? Are they using these features? Do they find these features helpful in the process? And so it's kind of this ongoing cycle where defining the need, building a solution that meets the need, and then researching to make sure that what you build actually does meet the need, and then optimizing on those features and solutions. So that's the kind of cycle that we always go through to make sure we are building a solution that really meets the needs of our key personas.
Wow, that's great. So who should own, according to you, the product experience? Is this a marketer or someone, product manager, or who actually should own, according to you?
Well, it really depends, but I would say probably in the broadest, because the first thing I'll say is everybody should own the product experience. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a stake. Yes, everybody that works at the company has a stake in the product experience.
I think the leadership team should be part of it.
Yeah. And I would say, at ParkMobile, clearly, I probably as a marketing leader and a product leader combined, I probably own the biggest chunk of the product experience, but it's not a pure ownership. It's collaborative. So I work closely with our COO and our CTO and our CEO and our head of sales, and they all are key contributors into that. But what I see my role is not necessarily just being the dictator of the product, mm-hmm. rather being the gatekeeper. And so a big part of my job is looking at all the possible ideas out there, everything we could be doing, and then making sure we're being very smart in what we do. And in many ways, protecting the roadmap so it doesn't get too cluttered, overcommitted, unfocused. And so those are the big things that I really focus on. But at the broadest sense, I think it's, having one product owner or saying this person is the king of product at this company, that's never going to happen, right? Because the product is what the company sells. And so the product is always going to have a lot of people at different levels of the company who are going to be owning it in some way, contributing it in some way, providing feedback in some way. And so, I think the conversation on who owns it is not really the right conversation. The conversation is, what's your process mm-hmm. for evaluating what features we do? What's your process for understanding consumer behavior? And then going about a process where you're saying, all right, these are the most important things we have to fix. These are the most important things we have to do from a business perspective that are going to drive revenue, and making sure those things get into the roadmap. and they don't get interrupted by a lot of noise out there and everyone's pet projects.
Agree. Now, this is very interesting. The gatekeeper. I somewhere feel like that even if you have so many people in the team, right, but still there should be one person answerable, right, while communicating to the executive team, right. What do you say in this? Ultimately, someone has to report, right, from where we are moving from one point to other point, how the team has been. In fact, my next question, when I'm saying, right, about the product experience, is all about this: that how do you basically define product experience responsibilities?
Yeah. So we have a product team at ParkMobile, and we have different players on the product team that own different parts of the product experience. We have a director of user experience. She really owns the design, user experience flows, everything related to that. We have product managers over the app. We have product managers over our web properties. We have product managers over our client solutions, and product managers over our, that work on a lot of our integrations with technology partners. And the way that I hope the team works is that everybody owns their part of the business, and everyone's collaborating with their peers to make sure we all know what's going on. We're all working effectively together. And so that's really the way that we approach it. I have too much on my plate to be in the weeds on every single feature we're developing, every part of each product, every integration we have out there. So I really rely heavily on my teams to lead the charge, and they do that very well. And so my product manager, who's on the app, she runs that business, and she's driving our roadmap on the app and what our new features are and what's coming and what's next. And that's how I like to run it. And we're talking every day about what we're working on, what challenges we have. But it's those kind of things, having product owners that are true owners is critical, and empowering your people to really lead the charge is important. What I try to do as the higher up lead is really set the strategy that they can then execute on, and to make sure we're aligned on what we're trying to do, and then trying to also being the coach to help them figure out, how do I get around roadblocks, how do I deal with this issue, how do we kind of get this done faster. So trying to just be a real kind of coach and mentor to the team as they're working hard to get product shipped.
How do you basically resolve the conflicts, when you sometimes are convinced that the one person or everyone in the team is making sense, but then when the business challenge is there, right, and we talked about it, right, many times in the team, right, people keep coming up with the ideas, but then you have to somewhere convince them that this is the priority, or maybe partially some team members are convinced, but then other members, there is always a conflict, right? How do you resolve the conflict in such situation?
Well, oftentimes the challenge we see is that product managers have a tendency to make perfect the enemy of good, right? And that's something that I have to work with the team a lot on, because we want to. And I love that our product managers are focused on shipping perfect products, right? And they want to get everything done, but at the same time, we have to be smart. And again, back to the focus area, maybe we're not going to have the perfect product shipped, but we're going to have a really good product shipped. and I think a lot of the guidance I give is on is on how do we reduce the scope in some of the things we're working on, so they're not taking 12 months to get done, and we can get them done in 3 months, and then get the next set of features in the next 3 months. And a lot of that is what I try to focus on with the team is how do we reduce the scope of some of the ambitious things we want to work on, to make sure that we're not just always trying to hit a home run, but we're just trying to play small ball. We're trying to get, base hits. So, if you follow baseball, the teams that get a lot of people on base and play what they call small ball usually are better than the teams that just hit home runs all day. And so that's a lot of the focus. How do we get stuff done? How do we get great product to market fast, even if it's not 100% perfect, and then iterate and add things as we go. And so a lot of that's a lot of the time and energy I think that a product leader has to spend on these things is helping take these big ideas and then get them into ideas that you can actually get to market quickly. Because if, I'll tell you, if everything's a 12-month project or a 24-month project, your CEO is probably not going to be very happy with you. You have to get those runs on the board now. So you're able to show, you show progress, and in many ways show progress and start generating some revenue from your solutions.
Jeff, great insights. I think it's been a long conversation, but I'll take the one last question, and maybe after that, from the people who are listening or the viewing, right? Maybe we'll take the question from them also, and then we'll wind up. And I have this last question, which is very much important. It's always asked. So much we talked about experience and all, right, and how the team should be structured, who should own, who should not. But what is your best strategy to quantify the product experience? How do you get to know that it's really working well? What's your key metrics to focus on?
So we look at a lot of different metrics. And I mean, the first point is look at the metrics, right? And I'm often surprised when I talk to peers at different companies, how they don't have a clear visibility into what the KPIs are that are driving the business. And so that's the first thing, is make sure you are looking at the metrics, and that you actually have the app set up in a way that you can gather the metrics. But for us, it's in a lot of ways, it's fairly simple. We know how many people download the app. We know how many people then set up an account, and then how many people pay for parking, and then how many people keep using the app. So 4 key things, right? Those are 4 key touch points. And so almost all of our energy goes to how do we optimize for those 4 key metrics. So if we are not having a lot of people that go from download to registration, what's the issue there? How do we add something to the app that's going to handhold the person into a better registration process? If we have a lot of people registering, but then not paying for parking, what's the issue there? And so fortunately, we have very high conversions on a lot of those metrics, right? Almost 90% of people who register for the app do a parking transaction. Okay, so that's really good. But what if we can get another 5% there, right? So what if we can get that up to 95%? With the volumes of transactions we do on a monthly basis, that is significant revenue for the company. So we're really focused on, all right, what is it going to take to get that 10% up? And we do a lot of research actually to figure out, all right, why'd you register and create an account and then not transact? The other thing we do is we focus on, after people do their first parking transaction, many times they don't do a second transaction. And so that's the next path is, all right, how do we get that number up? How do we get people that are parking once to park more often, right? And then the third part is, okay, we have people who park all the time using the ParkMobile app. How do we get them to use our other solutions? So in addition to just paying for parking at the meter, we offer parking reservations. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about, all right, how do we convert a on-street parker into now someone who's doing a reservations parking? And so looking at the metrics related to all of those things are really what we focus a lot of our time and energy on, because the more we can, convert our users who are registering into paid users, convert our paid users into other products, make sure that our paid users are continuing to use the app. That is how we drive revenue for the business. And so it's all about that. And it's really that simple. We monitor NPS, we monitor app reviews and all those things, but really it's all about the conversions at those key revenue generating points. And that's where the majority of our energy and resources go to.
That's really wonderful. I think we got a great insight, Jeff. Right? It was really wonderful having you in the show and this live conversation here. We were live from YouTube and LinkedIn. But then before you wind up, right? I really want to know about your upcoming book, which is in 2000, which is going to be published on 2021, and I think it's a great year to start with. I guess. Could you talk about a little bit about your upcoming book?
Sure, Samir. So the book is called "How Not to Suck at Marketing." It's I would say it's a survival guide of sorts for navigating a marketing career. If you want to learn more or get on the mailing list, it's the URL is hownottosuckatmarketing.com. So very simple, hownottosuckatmarketing.com. But it's a book that's being published by a company called How to Conquer. It's meant to be, probably a guide for people that are either earlier in their career, mid-level career, or even senior, just on things they do, things you can do, things you can think about that'll help you overcome roadblocks and really have a very successful career in marketing and make a big impact on the organizations that you work for.
Oh, so I mean, and does it really mention about the changing times, which the people are in this COVID-19 situation, right? Does it mention about the scenarios which help basically figure out the ways to do the better marketing in this COVID time, a crisis?
Yeah, I have a whole chapter on lessons learned from COVID-19, and really it's really about how to do marketing in a time of crisis, and some of the things we've learned at ParkMobile, some of the lessons I've taken away. So yes, that is a part of the book, but there's a lot more to it too, about building brands and how do you work with your CFO, how do you work with your CFO, how do you build a team, how do you get your next job. So it's got a lot to it beyond just the COVID story. But I think people will like it. I think it's going to be a good book.
Looking forward, Jeff. Right, I believe that I would immediately subscribe to your mailing list. And anyway, now we are connected on LinkedIn. But the people, right, those who are live and joining us, please do subscribe to his mailing list. And Jeff, right, it was really wonderful having conversation. Of course, it went more than what we thought of. Right, it was supposed to end within 45 minutes, but then we have already crossed more than an hour. But it was really great conversation and authentic conversation. And for the people, right, those who have joined, right, this is my first the Experience Business podcast live going on LinkedIn and the YouTube. Before that, we had 14 sessions recorded offline, but then I decided that at least one session weekly I do it live so that we can have the enough conversation. Same recording will also go in the audio format on Anchor, and then in various other platforms, whichever is your favorite app, just go there. And if you want to listen to in the audio mode, right, you can enjoy this conversation. Thank you so much, Jeff, for being in the show.
All right. Thanks, Samir. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye. Have a good day.